Number 5. The craft's shot down. It has been a huge year for UFO enthusiasts like yours truly. Earlier, we got the release of the UAP reports from the Pentagon, which were basically the wildest documents in US government history, where the Pentagon confirmed they've been researching UFOs and kind of just slid it under the door like nobody cared. It made UFOs more than tinfoil hat talk, almost made discussions about it reputable. And I guess since then, that wasn't enough to keep us all entertained. As of last week, we've turned things up even more, since we've had 2 mysterious aircrafts shot down, and the United States and Canadian governments are being pretty cagey about it. So let's run through a quick timeline of what hopefully doesn't turn out to be Independence Day, and let's all pray we didn't kickstart an intergalactic war. On February 10th, a US fighter jet brought down a currently unidentified object soaring over the coast of Alaska. The object shattered into pieces after being shot down and was confirmed to most likely not be a balloon, according to the Department of Defense. I guess that's good to know, or not at all, since it doesn't answer anybody's questions. A White House official referred to the object as being the size of a small car, with enough room for a family of 4 to 5 aliens to fit comfortably, and you can put the back seat up and put some stuff in the storage. This would already be enough to fuel speculation for 10 years, and then literally the next day, February 11th, another unidentified flying object was shot down, this time over Canada, around the Yukon. That's the province that borders Alaska. A US flown F-22 Raptor shot down the second object, which was described as smaller than the first and cylindrical in nature. Okay, well, that's all the weird stuff that happened this week. Nope, because on the 12th, another strange object was shot down over Lake Huron. An object that first had appeared over Montana appeared on Sunday, which was then shot down. It was octagonal, apparently, and it had strings hanging off of it, but it wasn't carrying anything, so no one knows why. Maybe it was just an Amazon drone. Now, things keep getting weirder, I swear to you. Listen to this next part, you're not gonna believe this. When an Air Force commander, Glenn Van Herk, was asked directly on whether or not he thought any of these objects were alien in nature, he said, "I haven't ruled anything out at this point." What? I can't even speak, but the current sitting government officials are like, hey, maybe it's aliens, shrugging their shoulders. Is this it, guys? Is this it? They didn't specify whether or not these objects posed a threat. They said they just posed a threat to civilian air traffic, but the White House did say that these objects were broadcasting signals. I would say watch this space for updates, but really just like watch regular space. At this rate, there's gonna be an alien every single day. But if you can't wait for any more and you just want to watch alien videos all day, I completely agree with you. That's what I do every day and it's great. We've got loads of alien and UFO vids, NASA conspiracies, and hey, if that's not your jam, we got scary stories, horror movies, monsters, cryptids, true crime, baby, we got just about everything spooky under the sun and above it. So stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary, but most importantly, stay scared. But subscribe after. We gotta finish this video first. We got way more alien footage to get through. Moving on. Number 4, the Picket Post, Arizona sighting. Well, with all of this stuff flying around in the sky these days, is it any surprise that people are catching more weird footage than ever before? The UFO subreddit has been lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July with all kinds of alien sightings from all across the globe. Come take a look at some of the best ones I've seen this week. Hopefully they're new to you as well. Our first sighting comes to us from a redditor by the username of MaxKeller96, and they posted a short clip from Picket Post, Arizona that's got us talking. Take a quick little look-see. This is one of the better ones I've seen in a minute. Here's what the redditor had to say about the clip. My sister, dad, and I were out hiking near Picket Post when one of us noticed something glimmering near the mountain, so we stopped to take a look at it. All I could make out was that it was a small bright dot in the sky. After a good 15 seconds of staring, I started recording. It then dropped what looked like 2 flares, though my sister swears she counted at least 3. Up until that point, I thought it might have been a helicopter, as there's all sorts of army stuff out there, but there's no way anything can accelerate that fast. We all lost sight of it nearly instantly after the video cuts, and we were pretty freaked out about it. I've replayed it about 100 times, and I've tried showing it to everyone, and no one has any idea other than that it could be a super advanced drone. So, if you think you know, please let me know. Well, you heard the guy. If you think you have any ideas to what's going on, you comment down below or jump into the Reddit thread and participate in the UFO discussion. The UFO subreddit is great, and they're very friendly to new visitors. That's like their whole thing. They really want to welcome new visitors. Number 3, the San Diego sighting. The San Diego and Tijuana sighting, to be more accurate. Our next entry is a pretty interesting one, because it isn't just one offhanded sighting that happened in the middle of the night by somebody stumbling out in a bathrobe who's half awake, but it's a corroborated sighting that was happening seemingly seemingly across the cities of Tijuana and San Diego. And it wasn't even while Comic-Con was happening, so this isn't part of an extremely elaborate campaign for Ant-Man 4 or anything. So we either have a mass hallucination on our hands because there was something in the water, or there's some questions in the sky that need to get answered. So we'll play a few seconds of some of these clips and help you come to your own conclusions. On September 19th, 2022, several of these videos were captured of these bizarre light patterns darting across the sky. This is a massive sighting, so we can't quite dismiss this as a trick of the light or one isolated incident. There was definitely something weird flying up and around. What makes this kind of notable, besides from, how well documented this is I would say the pattern of the lights. They don't really follow like a flare pattern at all, so I don't think it's something that was dropped from an aircraft. When you watch it, they almost kind of seem to move in like a perfect unison, like flashy geese. The original poster who posted the compilation clip to Reddit added as well that another oddity they noted was that after the lights were seen, and military fighter jets surrounding and circling the skies, probably to round up whatever was going on. So, comment section, I'll throw it back to you again. What do you think? Spy drones, weird paranormal lights, or is it just visitors? I think it's alien tourists who heard what a great time a weekend in Tijuana is and want to check it out. Could you imagine if aliens do come to Earth, but they're not really interested in like diplomatic relations or starting a war or anything? They're just like, we heard you guys party hard and we want in on that. Number 2, Michigan and Grand Park. Another very weird sighting coming from Reddit. This one was posted not even 2 days ago by a Redditor with a very funny username I can't read out loud on YouTube, but just know it was very funny. At first, it kind of looks like a piece of litter that somehow managed to get all the way up in the sky and is fluttering and darting all around. But if you take a closer look at it, it really seems like it's moving like it's being controlled. People in the comments of the subreddit quickly pointed out that a similar object to this showed up in Australia when this one's filmed in Michigan. Isn't that odd? 2 of these similar reports happening on almost opposite ends of the world. People in the subreddit theorized that this object in the video is one of the ones that was shot down over Lake Huron, which definitely makes sense. Lake Huron is, in Michigan. Could this be some of the last footage of this alien craft before it got burnt up? From this clip, I would say to me personally, it looks like some sort of hyper advanced drone, maybe more than a piloted craft. It looks very small, so unless there's like a really teeny tiny little alien inside there, I don't know. But with all cell phone footage, it's kind of impossible to ascertain the size of the thing. I think this one's pretty conclusive personally, and if this really is footage of the object that was shot down over Lake Huron, I would say the United States and Canadian governments agree with my assessment as well. But as all of these clips, please let me know what you think it is. If it's a drone or an alien or maybe just a really impressive kite that accidentally got destroyed. Number 1, the Colombia sighting. Now, our number 1 sighting is another international one. You think aliens are only going to show up around North America? Come on, expand your worldview a bit. If aliens invade, they're going to go after the whole planet. There's a whole lot to see, a whole lot of things they could burn down with lasers. And it seems like they were curious about the countryside of Colombia, because this footage out of Bogota, Colombia is truly out of this world. Seriously, this is like the most impressive UFO footage I've ever seen in my life. It was captured by a pro photographer who sent it along to a friend of his who's a YouTuber. Hey, reach out, let's collab. In the hopes of getting it to more eyes and people who can analyze it. And yeah, seriously, this is one of the most convincing things I've ever seen. Take a look. Now, I don't want to, poke the bear too much. I know this sounds kind of annoying. I am almost of the belief that this footage is simply too good. I wouldn't outright throw it away and discard it, but I can't remember the last time I've ever seen UFO footage where the craft in this question is this clear and easy to make out. You can almost like make out sci-fi parts of it, It looks to me like it wouldn't look too out of place in a cool video game like a Halo or something. If anyone's a Metroid fan, it reminds me a lot of like the ship that Samus flies around in. I'm just excited because they put Metroid Prime back out there. I think this raises kind of an interesting question and sort of a little like food for thought for debate. As camera quality improves and the average person is now at all times carrying with them a camera that rivals most professional quality, no doubt we're gonna start seeing more stuff like this. There's gonna be an influx of footage that starts to look much clearer, which then ironically ends up getting dismissed because it just looks too good and we assume it's been faked. We're used to blurry blobs shooting across the sky, and I think that's what we kind of think UFOs look like. It's a bit of a weird horseshoe where you kind of want alien footage to look bad so it's more believable. I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling, maybe it all makes sense, but let me know what you think about this one. I think this is absolutely nuts, and I think this is the most exciting time to be into UFOs and UAPs as a whole, because it really feels like we're getting a breakthrough pretty soon. But maybe I just want to believe. Number 5, above Las Vegas. Our first clip coming up today comes to us from Las Vegas, Sin City, and possibly a place of close encounters. Now, I wouldn't outright ignore a UFO sighting just because it came from Las Vegas, but it's definitely worth remembering that anyone recording this clip probably was having a lot of fun and, you know, doing some things, and probably just lost a down payment on their house, so take it all with a grain of salt as you would any other UFO clip. Like most UFO clips, it's pretty difficult to make out what's happening exactly, but up in the sky we can see something moving through the cloud that sure doesn't look like a bird, a plane, or Superman. We can see a red ring looking down ominously on the streets below like the Eye of Sauron. From what we can make out, the shape looks to be gigantic. You know, impossible to really ascertain from a street level, but yeah, it's big. It is definitely big. Now, I love the feel of this clip, like the aliens flying overhead feels very cinematic to me, but the skeptic in me has to acknowledge with how many bizarre lights must be going off at any given time down on the strip, it's not impossible that this clip is just a trick of the light, but I can't deny that the clip does look good. Would I bet on this being an alien? I'm not sure, but since it is in Vegas, I'm certain I could find someone who would bet on it. Trouble, of course, though, is I feel like even if an alien was spotted, like walking around Las Vegas in broad daylight, no one would ever be allowed to talk about it since, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. It even extends to UFO sightings. Now, if you missed the first 2 parts of our recent UFO sighting vids, you have got to go catch up. And if that still isn't enough for you, we have got alien videos all over the channel. So click that subscribe button, ring that little bell for video notifications, and don't miss a single frame of evidence from us. Stay subscribed, informed, and scared. Number 4, in Brazil. For our next one, we are going to be headed out to Brazil, and wow, I have absolutely no idea what is going on in this clip, but it is definitely bizarre. Let's get some eyes on it. Can you take a look at this for me? I'd say what on earth is that, but I think it is extremely clear that whatever is happening in this clip is not of this earth. It looks like a ball of like molten hot lava just existing, vibing, floating along in the countryside. It almost looks like it's dripping too, which I think is interesting. Could this be like sparks flying off of a craft or some technology infinitely too advanced for little old me to possibly understand? A commenter on the video made an interesting comparison that I will include here too for posterity, noting that the dripping effect reminded one commenter of the described UFO in the Rendlesham Forest incident, which was purported to have also been dripping something out of it as it flew, which resembled magma. And if you don't know the Rendlesham Forest incident, we've covered it a couple times on the channel. Can't remember the exact titles of the videos, but I definitely have talked about it. The entity moves very erratically, so it's hard to even guess what this could be. The light seems to be like pulsing out of it. Usually you can always entertain the possibility in any UFO clip that, you know, maybe it's a drone or a weather balloon, but for this one, I am out of ideas, and I am more likely to say it's a demon than anything else. So I am officially turning this one over to you guys, comment section. If you can crack this case, you are more than welcome to be my guest, and please let me know if you've got any theories or ideas about this one, because I am fresh out of them. Number 3, Guadalajara. Our next video is going to be taking us down to Mexico, in Guadalajara specifically. Originally posted to TikTok, the video is pretty clear, refreshingly for UFO clips. You can see something bizarre flying around in the sky, with a series of lights flashing in a circular, almost like honeycomb-esque pattern hovering above the city. Surveying? Just checking things out? Got lost and should have taken a right turn at Albuquerque? A commenter on the video shot down the idea of it being an airplane, which I know most of you are probably thinking while you're watching this, saying that they've worked in an airfield their whole life and they've never seen an aircraft that had lights on it like that, and it didn't have a beacon on it, a giveaway that it wasn't a plane. Now, some had suggested a possibility that it could be a collection of drones all flying together in unison, but for what purpose, I could not tell you. A very complicated hoax? A military operation? Just for kicks? I think what's getting me about this clip is that the UAP flies in like a perfectly straight line, but isn't a plane. I don't know enough about drones to dispute this, but I can't imagine it'd be easy to get a ton of drones all moving in a perfect formation like that, but maybe it actually is very easy and I'm just ignorant. All I know is that this clip is definitely weird, and I've watched it approximately 100 times, pausing and yelling at my editor to zoom and enhance like I'm a CSI guy. If anyone in the comments can translate what's being said in the video, maybe that'll help out. Although I imagine it's mostly people just saying, look at that weird thing in the sky, what is that? And I feel like you've probably got more than enough of that from me in this video already. Number 2, South Africa. Our next clip is down in Zambia, South Africa, and it honestly looks like an arrival scene that came out of a movie. We can see 4 blindingly bright lights slowly coming forward in the night sky, offering absolutely no clue as to what this could possibly be. Now, the usual drone theory is definitely possible. We can consider this could be 4 drones moving in unison or something, but I don't know. It seems too perfect to be drones. Now, since it is in South Africa, I would be more than a little concerned that this could possibly be the prawns touching down, and I hope we all learned a very important lesson from District 9 about how to treat our alien friends. The clip in question also features an amazing narration, and I don't know how much of it we're allowed to include in here.
A lot of you are so smart, you're so intelligent. Tell me what this is. These things are so aligned. How does this happen?
But you can hear the camera guy just absolutely going off in like the funniest rant about how no one can explain what he's seeing, and if you'd like to come down and explain it for him, he includes his like GPS coordinates and everything. It is so funny, definitely worth looking up later. Now, some skeptics in the comment section have pointed out that this could very well be as easily explainable as lights from a crane or a lamppost on a football field or something, and yeah, it definitely does seem possible, but I'd like to see the same location in the daytime, see what's happening there. But it could also be something completely mysterious touching down and coming forward, and if you're so smart, you explain it to him. That's what he says in the thing. It's so funny. And number 1, Tom DeLonge sighting. Now, I'm including this next one for a couple reasons. First and foremost, it's a very impressive clip of a UFO flying around, and when you watch it in a second, you'll understand where I'm coming from. But secondly, because it was shared by Tom DeLonge, and I just love the fact that after selling out who knows how many Warped tours, the Blink-182 frontman spends his days looking for all the small things in the sky. That's a little Blink-182 joke for you. In his Instagram post, Tom writes that this clip changed the world. I'll let you decide for yourself. Now, for what it's worth, this clip really is something. DeLonge included several alterations to the little clip. We got some thermals, enhancements, stabilization, and yet none of it really helps too much at being able to figure out just what exactly this is, if not a flying saucer. We can see this thing zipping around in the sky, and then it seemingly activates like warp speed because it just vanishes in the sky, going back to the mothership, I guess. Now, if you're looking at this and you think maybe it looks a little bit too good and you're like CGI radar is starting to go off, you are not entirely alone, because some commenters on this clip said that it looks too good and were suspicious. Doubly so because, well, Tom DeLonge has spoken rather openly about his hopes to eventually turn his To the Stars research group into a multimedia empire, including movies and television and all sorts of stories to broadcast the truth. So it wouldn't be completely inconceivable that perhaps this could be faked. Although if you really did see a UFO, wouldn't it look fake to your eyes, It would look like something literally out of this world, and your brain would probably be scrambling a bit trying to make any sense of it whatsoever. One has to wonder, do you think there's ever been any like totally genuine UFO footage that has been dismissed and labeled as fake CGI because it just looks too perfect? Like, imagine we finally find aliens and we just dismiss them. Number 5. Let's start off with a bang and get a good one for you right off the bat. I like to save these ones for last, but with this compilation, pretty much all of the sightings I've found for you today are winners. This clip is short and sweet, so let's play as much of it as we can. Posted to Twitter from the account UFO Twitter. From what we can make out, we see something barreling through the skies at top speeds, looking faster than just about anything any human tech could put out. It's got a bit of like a football shape to it almost, and I'll shout out my favorite comment on the video underneath, which says, looks like Uncle Rico finally threw that football over the mountain. Little Napoleon Dynamite throwback for you. Whatever it is definitely looks weird. You know, it looks to me more like it's possibly some hyper-advanced spy craft or military drone than it could be any weather balloon. Having watched it roughly 30 million times over, pausing every frame like I'm a CSI investigator and I'm pressing my nose right up against the monitor, I noticed that there's a white curved surface on the black shell of the craft, almost looking like it could be a dome for a pilot. I can't make it anything on the inside, of course, but it does give off the impression that the craft is manned, or alien. I don't know what the correct verbiage is here. Something else I noticed in my freeze frame play-by-play of the video is that it almost looks as if the craft has some sort of writing on the back of it. You know, if it was just CGI, I doubt that someone would go to that length just to fool some folks on Twitter, but hey, never doubt the power of boredom and access to video editing software. So, folks back at home, what do we think about this one? Spy plane, some new advanced military technology, your run-of-the-mill balloon, or just some very, very convincing computer handiwork? And if you're looking for more UFO clips to squint at, well, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. Just in this one series of videos alone, I've collected 20 clips of UFOs all from this year that you should check out. And again, that's just this series alone. If this is your first time coming on in, welcome. You'll see we've got videos on cursed objects, ghosts, paranormal activities, cryptids, and honestly a whole lot more. Just about everything scary under the sun. There's a world of scares out there, so subscribe, stay scared, but check that out after this video, okay? We worked really hard on this one. Number 4, Bondi Beach. Our next video comes to us from the land down under, so you might need to flip your phone or your monitor, your tablet or whatever upside down to get a good look at the UFO. Maybe that'll help. See if that gets it there for you. Caught on Bondi Beach by TikTok user DJ Just, we've got a pretty clear view of something strange flying across the beautiful blue Australian sky. Now in this clip we can see something shiny, round, and reflective making its way up there, tailed behind by a black helicopter. Looks to be kind of small, maybe the size big enough for one person or maybe 3 or 4 little green men depending on how compact they are. I want to know if that helicopter is a coincidence or if it's responding to this UAP, you know, coming in to recover it, make contact. Now commenters on the video suggested that it could very well be a weather balloon passing through, and it's definitely likely. That's what it turns out to be like 99.9% of all UFO sightings. But if it was a weather balloon, you know, surely it would have been shot down during that little welcoming party where we were shooting down weather balloons all over the globe, right? Kidding. Another commenter suggested kind of reasonably that it could be a plane because there is a military base fairly close by to Bondi Beach, which would make some sense. Might even explain that helicopter coming in near the end there. Unfortunately, this clip is a little more zoomed out than some of the other ones on here, so it's not the easiest to say what's going on here, but I kind of feel like that's half the fun with UFO clips, isn't it? You know, trying to figure out what's going on. It's like a little guessing game. Let's hear what you all think down there. Is this aliens trying to touch down in Sydney? Or just something perfectly reasonable? I know which one I would infinitely prefer it to be. It's the aliens, in case you were wondering. It's aliens. Number 3, Canada. I had to include this next clip. I just had to. Yes, it's a very cool clip, but mostly it was taken from my hometown. Mississauga, baby! No one famous has ever come from there, so there might be a halfway decent chance I could be Mississauga's biggest star as I spend my days endlessly watching the stars. Enough talk about the Greater Toronto Area's greatest borough. Let's take a look at some more UAP clips. Coming in next is a clip posted to Reddit, simply titled, "Weird Object Seen Flying Over Mississauga," and it is hard to disagree. Why don't you take a little look-see for me? I mean, look at it. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say that just looking at it won't tell you. What on earth is going on here? What I love about this clip is that this one doesn't even remotely look like anything else I've seen in a minute. This doesn't look like a weather balloon or a flying saucer. I don't even know where you'd start describing this one, really. This one looks like it's a UFO Rorschach test, I think. You take a look at it and reveal some element of your personality. I kind of see a little spaceman, like a little Among Us guy, hovering around on a jetpack. The way it moves really gets me too. It seems erratic and alive, less like it's being controlled and more like something's fighting the controls here. Now, I always like to listen to both sides of every story when it comes to UFO sighting content, and one user in the comments here suggested that he was pretty certain that this was just a Mr. Peanut balloon being let loose, and I have to admit I kind of see it. I don't know if you want to throw up a photo of Mr. Peanut here. I just think it's absolutely hilarious if this UFO sighting is really just a sighting of a giant floating lagoon. I'll leave it to my commenters to decide. You're my best and brightest. How are we feeling on this clip? Is this something weird in the sky? Proof of travelers from beyond the stars experimenting with some new technology that we couldn't possibly understand? Bigger than any of us? Bigger than this galaxy? Or is this just a bit of advertising for a salty snack from the Planters Corporation? Either truth is horrifying. Number 2, best UFO clip. Our next video was posted to TikTok by the user UFO Tracker. Good, we need somebody tracking that. And the caption says it's the best UFO sighting caught on camera. It's definitely pretty good, I'll give him that. But I'm putting it at the number 2 spot if for nothing else to keep UFO Tracker humble. You know, I want to keep you working hard. But for what it's worth, this is definitely a great clip. Why don't you take a look for me? We can see a flying saucer type looking UFO floating around in the sky, almost looking a bit like a perfect sphere. You know, it looks like it's got a glowing light in the middle. If anyone out there is an Apex Legends fan, immediately I said it looks exactly like a cargo bot, and you should consider shooting it down for some loot. And someone in the comments said the exact same thing, so hey, gamer minds think alike, or however that saying goes. Just as it seems like we might be able to get a good glimpse of whatever is happening up there in the sky, a fleet of what looks like a bunch of military vessels show up, presumably just to take care of what is just a weather balloon, right? Now, a lot of people in the comments on this one were more skeptical than usual, I noticed, with most of the commenters suggesting that this was either a balloon or a drone. One of the comments posted bemoaning how good CGI is getting, saying, "I don't believe anything I see on video anymore." Another one saying, with how good CGI is getting, it's harder and harder to tell the real from the fakes. I mean, I get it, we are getting pretty good. I'm not even a real person, I'm just an AI generation that does these videos for you. This clip does look pretty fantastical. The only trouble is I couldn't really find a location of where this was happening. If this was footage of one of those strange objects that have been shot down recently over the sky in the US or not, who knows? Maybe this footage was absolutely never meant to be seen, and I just got the whole office marked for surveillance, as if we're not already. My Google search history is enough to have me on like 4 different agency watch lists. It's nothing but alien videos, skinwalkers, Bigfoot sightings, and recommendations for local frozen yogurt places. And number 1, above the Pentagon. Now, you know I try to save the best for last for you guys. So here's one that I thought really stood out. I like to give you guys a little reward for sitting through the video. Good on you. Someone was recording driving down near Washington, D.C., and they spotted something incredibly bizarre moving through the clouds by the Pentagon of all places. It's hard to make out at all what's happening here, but in the clouds we can see something gigantic, like behemoth size. Almost looking like a pyramid or an Imperial Star Destroyer floating through the clouds. It seems too as if it's almost like cloaking in and out sometimes. Maybe I'm just crazy, maybe I'm too tired, maybe I've had too much coffee or not enough. But man, I love a UFO clip where while you're watching it, you just scratch your head and throw your arms up and go, yeah, I have absolutely no idea what's going on here. That could definitely be aliens. This giant cheese wedge shaped thing in the sky certainly raises some eyebrows. It's way too big to be a drone. It's way too triangular to be a balloon. So just what is it, eh? Something about it being near the Pentagon too also sets off more than a few alarms in my head. Could it be that, you know, whatever this is trying to make contact with the people who'd be most likely to be reaching out? What's interesting too is triangular UFOs actually come up way more often than you think. I'd say more than flying saucers even. As someone who's seen maybe, 30,000 UFO clips in my lifetime, that's a rough estimate, I can tell you a lot of the really, really good ones and encounters describe these big triangular ships like this. Now, commenters on this video were fairly stumped, with most just agreeing in amazement that whatever this was that was being caught on camera was definitely head-turning. A pretty funny comment that stood out for me on this one was someone asking, if you saw this, why wouldn't you pull over? More important than whenever you were going. And I kind of agree. Maybe we could have had the perfect UFO evidence footage if the driver was just willing to stop in the middle of the highway and get out and start recording. Some people are so inconsiderate. Number 5, El Cajon, California. Our first clip today comes from the beautiful Californian city of El Cajon. Let's take a look at something strange that was spotted in the sky that's got the locals talking. This clip was captured and posted to Reddit by user Exporius. Oh, Exporius, that's fun to say. Say that at home if you haven't yet. Let's take a look at the clip first. Pretty interesting stuff, huh? Definitely something that makes you want to take another glimpse. When it was posted to Reddit, Exporius sounded off in the comments and offered a little bit of context as to what was going on. Here it is. 3 black spheres appeared overhead my apartment complex in the afternoon in El Cajon, California. The objects were unlike balloons, rotating around each other and seemingly unaffected by the wind. My partner, who you can hear talking in the background about UFOs, agrees that the shapes were moving in an odd formation relative to the wind. They were also flickering in the sky, disappearing in and out of visibility, not at all like the metallic reflection of a Mylar balloon. The objects disappeared shortly after my girlfriend made me stop filming to go inside. Suddenly, the spheres whipped around about 90 degrees and vanished. Oh, his girlfriend made him stop filming to go inside. Imagine we had the perfect evidence of UFOs, but somebody had to stop filming because they had to go unload the dishwasher. Anyway, Exporius finishes off by saying, "Very strange. I have no idea what these are." And neither do we. This clip garnered a lot of attention in the subreddit where it was posted, getting people chatting about what it could possibly be, although with anything like this there were a fair share of skeptics. Some dismissed the sighting as being nothing more than a flock of birds moving in on a particularly strange triangular fashion, while others suspected it could have been drone. What is a bird if not a feathery drone? So what do we think, my fair viewers? Something worth writing a UAP report on, or was this something a real bird brain posted? You let me know down below, okay? And while I've got you, if you're not already subscribed to Top 5 Scary, now would be a great time to fix that mistake. We got loads of UFO clips. I mean, we're on part 7 of this series. You know we got UFO clips. Storytelling, cryptids, monsters, mythologies, terrible stories, stories too good to be real, and stories too real to be good. Stay subscribed, don't miss a scream, but keep watching this video first, okay? Moving on. Number 4, from a pilot. Our next clip was posted by the History Channel, of all places. I guess technically if a UFO did appear to us, that would be like a pretty big part of history, right? Still, it's funny to me that that's where I'm getting my UFO clips these days. This clip isn't some blurry footage shot from somebody staring right up at the sun. Instead, we have a front row seat from a B-320 pilot's cockpit as a pilot over a commercial flight in Colombia saw something truly bizarre that they couldn't explain. Why don't you take a look at this cuboid UAP that looks out of this world. Let's roll the clip. A metallic looking object that's got a bizarre shape, almost looking like somebody's rolling a giant D20 through the sky, comes hurtling into frame. When you slow it down, it does look a lot like a flying cube, so if you were worried about the Borg coming to assimilate us, this might just be that proof confirming that. Now, in the excerpt from the History Channel clip, they theorized that what this could be a probe or a drone of some type for an alien civilization sending out a first wave of scouts before the rest of the party gets here, and this strange object could be one of those drones, trying to sneak on by but being caught on camera. Now, not everyone is as convinced as our friends of the History Channel. More than a few viewers have thought that what that could have been caught in the sky here is nothing more than a balloon, and some strange angles are making it look a lot more alien and cuboid than it really is. So what do we think? Scouts from another civilization coming in to suss out the situation? Or is this clip posted by people who are just full of hot air? I'm getting punny today. Number 3, Arizona. Our next sighting comes to us again from our favorite friend for strange clips of flying objects. You know it and I know it. It's the UFO subreddit. Seeing as how we're on part 7, I think I owe the moderators and users of the UFO subreddit a top 5 Congressional Medal of Honor. There you go. Anyway, this next clip posted by user Giancarlo the Great showcases a UAP caught on camera in Phoenix, Arizona that's got everybody sounding off. Let's roll the clip and see if you can stay silent watching this. Now, it's hard not to see what the original poster was talking about because I'm pretty sure you saw the flashing lights floating eerily in the sky like a beacon. What's kind of funny is that the same day, from the same location, Phoenix, Arizona, another user on Reddit unintentionally recorded another angle of the exact same sighting, or at the very least the same object on a similar trajectory. And in that clip, we can see it pulsating a bit. It looks a little more circular from here. In fact, several commenters across both of these videos commented that they all saw this in Phoenix. So, it's possible that this sighting is bigger than we think, or that there's just not much going on in Phoenix, Arizona. No offense, I've never been, I'm sure it's lovely. I'm not sure which is more likely or which scares me more. Now, I've got to admit, this one's got me raising my eyebrows just a little bit because I can't quite figure it out just yet. Some users on Reddit suggest suggested that they thought what this could be is something being dragged in the sky, with some users suggesting that it looked like something was tethered and this could be a custom drone or a nighttime kite, which, side note, was not something I knew anyone did, but I've since learned is kind of a hobby. I'm now wondering how many years of UFO footage has all just been kites with like LED straps attached to the back of them, because I'm starting to suspect it was most of them. So what do we think? Aliens? Kites? Either is possible, really. Number 2, Metapod. Our next clip comes to us from Instagram with the pretty funny caption, "Metapod strikes again." You'll see what I mean in a moment. But I will say, this is basic stuff. Everybody knows Metapod can only use hardened. 0 out of 10. Go back. Do a lap. Now, we've featured clips from this particular UAP or style of UAP before on this channel, maybe the brand or whoever manufactures these crafts, so it's fitting that the caption is "Metapod strikes again." Well, this particular thing baffled me the last time I talked about it, and it's baffling us again all the way here, so here it is one more time. Let's roll that clip for you. Now, a quick aside for my viewership who aren't big gamers out there, Metapod is a Pokemon that's shaped like a cocoon, and I can definitely see where this Metapod comparison comes from. That's definitely what this creature looks like some sort of strange cocoon. It seems organic to me in a very weird way, you know? As if unlike a lot of other UAP sightings, this thing is something that's actually alive on its own. It almost looks like it moves a little, you know? Like it wiggles just a little bit, like it's got a little jiggle to it. Are you following me with this? I also feel like it looks a bit like a floating beehive. Maybe this thing is kind of like a Rorschach test. You see what you want to see. Now, the fact that this thing keeps popping up with different sightings definitely has me very curious as to what it could possibly be. Also, if there's any Rick and Morty fans out there, I swear this thing has like the exact same silhouette as the giant head that appears in the Get Swifty episode that asks humanity to show it what it's got. Maybe that's why this thing keeps coming back. We haven't shown it what we've got yet, and nobody has performed Get Swifty for it. So maybe get on that, and maybe we can appease this thing. Number 1, Sean Cahill. Our final clip for us today comes to us from Sean Cahill, a UAP enthusiast and a former Navy serviceman who is a veteran of 20 years, who in his retirement has become a decently big name in the UFO community as we set out there to look for the truth. Why don't you take a look at this clip he posted on Twitter and see if you can spot the UAP hovering up above. They'll circle it in red too, don't worry. Now we get a beautiful look at a mountain range, looks like a Windows XP background, and something very strange floating slowly moving across the horizon. Something flat looking like a disc, looking like a real classic flying saucer looking thing straight out of the movies. Now, at first glance, it's definitely got my attention because it's not often you get UAP clips that are this broad in daylight and this clear in view. I'm used to somebody shaking it around like they put their phone in the drying machine. Now, as always with stuff like this, I like to call attention to the more skeptical side of things because I think that gives us an air of credibility. More than a few people on Reddit suggested that this really could be something as uninteresting as just a plane moving slowly through the horizon, and looking at something like a short takeoff and landing private plane, it definitely seems like it would be very easy to make that mistake, but I personally want to believe that a 20-year Navy vet would know what a civilian plane would look like. So as always, my ghouls and goblins, I'm tossing this one over to you. My gang in the comments, what do we think? Could this be an alien presence caught on camera, or is this just a plain hoax? Plain, like plain, that's a little pun for you. That one's just for the scholars. You're gonna get that on the car ride home. Number 5, Bonita Springs, Florida. Our first clip today is gonna be coming to us from the UFO subreddit, because really, where else? The UFO subreddit is doing more to get alien content out in the open than any world government is willing to, so if they're not gonna do it, we gotta let the guys online pick up the slack. This clip was posted to us from user Marcus1640, who had this to say. Well, let's roll the clip though first, I think. I was working in my garage, which is about 100 feet west of this camera location, doing the things you do to keep the wife happy. The sky's clear, and out the corner of my eyes, I see this bright ball getting bigger and bigger. It was really bright and then faded away fast. It wasn't a meteor, and I checked planes live, nothing was close. I'm in Florida, so this stuff is pretty common, but this was weird. and no noise. Now in the clip it can be a bit hard to see, so I'll guide you through this definitely as well because it isn't black and white, which does take away some of it. But we see a bright light up in the sky that comes into frame, hovers around a little bit, it kind of seems like it's scoping out the situation, and then flies out of frame after I guess it decides there's nothing happening. Now OP said that the ball of light when he saw it come into frame was this shining, radiant orange, impressively bright in the night sky. Obviously that doesn't translate super well, so we have to use our imagination just a little bit, you know, close your eyes and imagine it's bright and orange. Wow, what a lovely shade you used. Now some speculation in the comment section of Reddit had people wondering if possibly this could be something like space debris burning up on re-entry, or a satellite reflecting the sunlight down to Earth for but a second. Pretty difficult to tell from here, but that's the way it goes with the paranormal sometimes. Nothing can ever be so easy, and would we really want it to be? I think we should have to fight for it just a little bit. Fight to get the truth out there. And as usual, my friends, if you're looking for more UFO sightings and content, I have a pretty good idea of where you can find more of it. We've got 8 parts worth of UFO sightings from 2023 alone. If you haven't clicked on through yet, you gotta catch up. And if UFO videos aren't your jam and you clicked on this out of accident, we've got loads more scary content for you, ranging from the macabre and mysterious to the outright horrific and hard to believe. Click on through and find something to scream at, and subscribe and help us out. Mean a lot from Old Tay. Number 4, the Netherlands. Our next sighting is going to come to us from the Netherlands. Seems even aliens can't resist hitting up Amsterdam. Let's roll the clip first to get your eyes on it, and then we're going to take a quick listen to the description posted by its witness, who's remained anonymous. Just before 6 p.m. in front of the cinema in Scheveningen? There's no way I'm pronouncing that right. I noticed this object. While viewing this object, it almost did not move at all. In the entire 20 minutes I was there, the object floated very slowly once to the left and right, and then twice up and down. The shape remained exactly the same throughout. The size remained the same regardless of whether or not this object moved up, down, left, or to the right, and there were no lights to be seen on it. Everything was completely black, and it looked like there was a smudge in the sky. In terms of height, this is unfortunately impossible for me to estimate. But there were several people who, like me, took photos and videos. The object was visible for about 20 minutes. Now the video we've included was pretty short. In fact, those 10 seconds were all that was in that video anyway. But when that video was posted to Reddit, it was corroborated by a few other sources who had all seen the same thing and posted similar videos. Meaning, this isn't some CGI trick, or if it is, a lot of people are in on this conspiracy. So what do we think this could possibly be? The usual suspect of it being a strange blimp or a balloon is always a possibility, and I've seen enough of these videos now that I'm always instantly like, this is probably just a balloon, isn't it? But it's still very, very weird. So let me know down below what you think. I love hearing from you guys about what you think on all this. Number 3, Phoenix, Arizona. This next clip was first posted to TikTok, but since being posted there has been making the rounds across the web since it's got UAP enthusiasts like yours truly peering their eyes open and gluing them to the screen. Let's take a look and you all tell me what you think, okay? Now whatever is going on in there is definitely odd. That much I can say with absolute certainty. There's something up there in the clouds that's floating above almost menacingly, maybe that's just me, and it's flashing a light brightly, and I swear it almost looks like it's turning invisible over and over again. The thing seems to be slowly moving across the sky in a way that makes it look like it's scanning the surroundings. Naturally, commenters went a bit wild with this clip, speculating like I am now. Some suggested that this could be something like hyper advanced military technology being tested out in the field, which would definitely be exciting, and honestly, more probable than not, I feel like there's a lot the government don't tell you about what they're working on. The CIA themselves even said that they think most alien sightings in the 50s and 60s were just reports of the U-2 spy craft. Others suggested that this could be something as dull as a civilian drone being flown around in the sky with a lighting rig attached for no other purpose than to drum up attention and get some TikTok views. But do you really think someone would do that? Someone would go on the internet and just lie for attention? I don't know. Meanwhile, more than a few people on the original TikTok were very convinced that this was a proper UAP alien sighting and could have been an alien visitor caught on tape. Comment section, I'm going to toss this one over to you as always. Me, personally, I'm a little inclined to believe this might be a boring one. This could just be a drone. Just because I'm not so sure that our alien visitors would give themselves away so easily by attaching lights to their crafts and letting themselves get identified so easily, but maybe that's what they want us to think. So I'm curious what you all think it could be. Number 2, Scotland. This next clip is going to be coming to us from Scotland. I like when we have UFOs all across the globe, you know, it makes it seem like we're all in this together. It was originally posted on the UFO subreddit as well. I'll roll an excerpt of the clip and then I'll walk you through the context that the user provided additionally with it. Let's roll it. Okay, pretty cool stuff, right? So the user posted, there are 2 objects in the sky moving at a steady speed. They were not massive, I reckon about the size of a Jeep, maybe twice that size at most. Twice the size of a Jeep is pretty big, I think. Definitely smaller than a plane, but a lot bigger than drones. They had no lights, no wings, no windows, and no propellers. They also made no noise. These objects looked much bigger in real life than they did in the video. On film, they appear to be black, but in real life, I would say they had a color similar to a cloud. Not quite white, but not quite gray either. They looked to be spheroid or tic-tac shaped, and they looked solid and metallic. They seemed like they had smoke coming out of them sometimes, but it was hard to know if that was just them moving through the clouds, causing an effect that looked like smoke. In terms of height, they were flying about twice the height of a typical city building, definitely lower than a plane would have. Also, may I just say, as someone who watches a lot of UFO clips, to be able to find one that is clear as day, filmed on a high quality camera, recorded for a good amount of time, and also had a lot of context provided, put this thing in a museum. That is 1 in a billion. I don't even care if these things aren't aliens. Those 3 qualities are more exciting than aliens to me. Now, when this clip was posted to Reddit, there were a few people speculating that these could be balloons, despite the original poster pointing out that they thought the things were emanating smoke, so it's, no pun intended, a bit up in the air what these things might be. We get reports of cuboid or tic-tac like UFOs a lot in this video series, which does make me think there's something suspicious going on if so many people report on similar objects like that, but we still don't have any answers. I hope we get there someday. I know the truth is out there. Number 1, Hollywood. Our final entry for this video is going to come to us from Hollywood. Even aliens like the tourist hotspots. Let's roll the clip and I'll add the commentary and speculation afterwards, because this one's a good one. There's a reason I saved it for the last. Now, the original poster and uploader stated, "We noticed this huge object in the sky just sitting there by the Hard Rock Casino in Hollywood, Florida." Whoa, 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 stop the track, stop the video. Are there 2 Hollywoods? I'm a Canadian, so I don't know these things. Is Florida in LA? You guys have to fix that for me. Okay, moving back. Anyway, the object blurred itself out when we started recording it. It was huge. It didn't do much, but it just sort of sat there and blurred itself out. I have tried to Google to find out what it was, but I'm coming up with nothing. It was my husband, my 2 kids, and I who witnessed this together. Now, I gotta admit, this is one of the most compelling bits of UFO evidence I have seen in a minute. Not to throw the other 4 clips under the bus, they're all very lovely in their own way, and I hold them all in my heart dearly, but this one, oh baby, this is the golden ticket. I'm sure there might be a reasonable explanation for it, but on first glance, this thing looks like the definitive flying saucer. Like if you close your eyes and imagine a flying saucer, you start imagining this. It even looks like if you're watching this thing with eagle eyes that the saucer at one point cloaks, and the original poster mentions that it was blurring itself out when they started recording. Very interesting to me. That would explain a lot over the years if aliens have been specifically constructing their crafts to blur them out from being recorded by cell phones. I mean, imagine aliens keep coming to Earth just for like vacation and they're getting so annoyed that they're trying to just have some fun, be tourists, and people cannot stop taking photos of them, so they're blurring out their crafts. So what do we think, my ghouls and goblins? Is this recording simply too good to be true? Is this movie magic and CGI up there? You do have to wonder why if this footage didn't set the internet ablaze, because that looks about as flying saucery as anything could possibly get. Of course, Maybe the men in black and the higher ups are trying to scrub this clip from the internet and don't want you to see, and maybe I just got the whole channel in trouble.
Number 5. Red Eyeball Ship. In January of this year, a man in Spokane, Washington was in his living room when he happened to sight a strange alien craft that caused him to question his beliefs and his place in the universe. In his own words, "Our backyard camera recorded this strange object. We put a camera in our backyard because stuff has been coming up missing. But one morning I had the TV on in my living room as I was sitting on our couch. I happened to look up at the TV and saw this strange object. I went out on the back porch and I couldn't see that object at all. But when I went back in the house, it was still there. I went to get my brother to show him what I was seeing. He didn't know what it was, but he was seeing it too. Then it started to move out in the field, where I didn't see it anymore. Then it started to come back towards my backyard. Again, it looks round with a red eyeball in the middle, but I have no clue to this day what it is. I took a couple photos in infrared. If you look in the center of the red, you can see something. Looking at the photos, it is difficult to come up with another explanation for what this strange unidentified flying object could be. Number 4. An American UFO. Our next tale was posted this year, but details an experience from the year 1980. The witness shared his story of seeing a UFO that seemed to be affiliated with the US government, but he also posits a theory about why the government would allow this ship to be seen by the public. I had a sighting in broad daylight in 1980 at around 9 a.m. in early December. My mom and hundreds of other motorists witnessed it as well. We were driving to visit my father at his work in Beverly Hills and were waiting to hop on the freeway in Santa Monica when we saw your classic silver disc. It hovered completely still at about 150 feet or so for 10 solid minutes. Remember, we were crawling, slow as molasses traffic. We got a very good look at this thing. On the underside was stenciled US Air Force. It looked very official, and we assumed it had to be one of ours. Then, after hovering for 10 minutes, it shot off towards the southwest like a bullet. I've never seen anything move so fast in my life. It was shocking, but I have a theory as to what the craft was doing there and why we witnessed it. I don't know how familiar you are with Jimmy Carter on the issue of UFOs, but he is on record as having had a sighting of his own in 1973. Carter was no flake. He had a degree in nuclear physics and is a former naval officer, retired at the rank of lieutenant, which in the Navy is like the Army equivalent of a major. Rank promotions are much harder and time-consuming in the Navy. Anyhow, Carter tried like hell to get disclosure during his presidency. He knew he was being stonewalled. When you think about it, it's unacceptable that the nation's most powerful elected leader cannot declassify something that the public, the world, has a right to know about. But what I've come to believe is that Carter ordered a captured or back-engineered UFO with official Air Force insignia to fly over a populated area, where thousands were waiting in traffic to get on the freeway, so people would ask the questions he couldn't find the answers to. Number 3. Father and son UFO bonding. Next, we have a story from Nova Scotia, where a young man saw an alien craft and panicked. He thought that no one would believe him until his father told him about his own close encounter from years before. Here is his story. My living room at the time had a window above me behind the TV. So, I am watching TV. I don't remember what exactly. It was about 2:30 or 3 a.m. at this point. My father got up to use the washroom and went back to bed. I got up to get a drink and saw something out of the corner of my eye, outside the window and above the high school. I literally could walk outside my house, take 2 steps, and I was on school property. I see this light above the school. I figured it was a meteor shower or space junk. I grabbed the binoculars. I looked out the window to see if I could see it. I couldn't really get a good look. It was too blurry through the window. So I went outside to have a look. It was not very bright in my small town. I look out towards the school. I see something I can only describe as a ball metal, almost like a flowing liquid metal, but to my eyes seemed like it was taking the form of a sphere, condensing in on itself from time to time and rippling. As if the surface rippled like water, the light from it appeared that way. It was circular, bright, white, almost silvery. At times, It seemed that the light coming from it had faded, and I could see that it was a solid sphere, silver in appearance. I do not know how big it would be. I guess would be the size of a 2-seater passenger plane. It darted from above the school to the hospital in a blink of an eye. The distance was about 1/4 of a kilometer, but on a somewhat linear path. I had my eyes glued to it, and it blinked out of existence. It is the only way I can describe it. I could no longer see it. I scanned around the sky with the binoculars, then found it was above a church about a full kilometer away. Same strange ball rippling like metal. I was outside for, I believe, 25 to 30 minutes. Based on my coming back in between 3:30 a.m. and 4 a.m., my brain could not comprehend what I was seeing. I literally thought I was dreaming or experiencing some kind of hallucination. I felt as if what I was seeing was straight out of a movie or sci-fi book. It was like it was darting around our entire town at random intervals, going from one part to another within the blink of an eye. The distance it traveled from the school to the hospital to the church is in total 1.4 kilometers. I snapped, and for some reason started crying. I ran to my dad and woke him up. "It's a satellite," is what he said. My father enjoyed watching stuff on UFOs and personally believed the US government covered something up about Roswell, but I never really said too much. He told me to go to sleep. I was terrified, for whatever reason. I was so scared after it. I did not sleep for months unless one of my parents was awake while I fell asleep. I really struggled with whatever I experienced that night for a very long time. It was a horrific experience for me, and hard to even talk about. I had extreme anxiety and depression from it. I was only a teenager, just barely. I found myself being paranoid. I did not want to be alone at all. Anywhere, in the daytime, I would make sure I always knew where someone was. I was never alone. I was so afraid, I started saying prayers. I spent the next 5 years looking at everything I could that was related to UFOs. The sensation I had from it. I felt a oneness kind of, but also so completely overwhelmed with fear. It felt as if my skin was trying to escape my body. My spine burned, and the entire time I was filled with thoughts of, this is amazing, and I'm going to die. I need to get in the house. All the hair on my body was standing up. I was sweating. When I got in the house, my shirt was nearly stuck to me in sweat. My father thought I went outside and got attacked and ran away. I was crying and rambling about some craft in the sky and how it was going to get me. My father told me he never saw anyone so absolutely terrified before, that I was nervous and would look out the windows at night to make sure I was okay. I've never been so afraid in my life of anything. My body was telling me I was going to die. My father didn't like me waking him so I could sleep. My mother, well, was not in the picture. My father's reaction is based off of a sighting he had in the 70s that some people in the town saw. He was ridiculed by people for talking about the craft he saw so close to the ground it looked like it was going to land in the blink of an eye. It darted off and was gone. He said it was circular in shape, like the classic UFO, glowed bright yellow, and had a low hum to it. He doesn't really like talking about it. Number 2. Another father-son tale. Next, we have a story from a man who was not a believer in alien life until one night his young son pointed out something in the night sky to him. In his own words, "I was in my home in Almond, Michigan. That time of year it gets quite dark quite early. It must have been around 8 p.m. My son, who at the time was 12, came running into the house, saying there was a UFO right outside our house. Let me add, at this point, I was not one who believed in UFOs. I went outside and my son pointed south and upwards and said, 'Look.' The funny thing was, at first I didn't see anything, but I did notice it was unusually dark. Then I noticed a very dim light. I suddenly realized that the reason it was so dark was that there was a huge craft right over our driveway. It was at tree level and was moving north at a very slow pace, approximately a slow walking speed. There was a very distinct humming, exactly like a large transformer humming. There was a very dull light in the middle, and as it traveled down our driveway, I made out a row of windows around the craft. The windows looked very large. I remember walking down the driveway with my son. The next thing I remember is standing out in the field north of my house, still looking at the UFO, when suddenly it went from approximately 90 or 100 feet straight up in the sky to where it was a pinpoint of light. It just looked like another star. This happened in under a second. We continued to watch it for quite a while when it took off in a northwesterly direction, like a meteor, and was gone in a second. There are a lot of things I can describe if you are interested, but this is the basic part. I don't feel like I was abducted, but honestly, I do not remember how I got from my driveway and then into the field. Number 1. Bigfoot, Alien Hunter. Our final story is perhaps the most insane sounding story I've ever read. It began when a group of friends went to stay in a cabin in Missoula, Montana. At first, everything seemed normal until they looked to the sky after dinner on their first night, as one of the witnesses reported. Right there, hovering above the meadow at almost the level of the hills off in the distance, it appeared to be a triangular shape / sphere shaped like an arrowhead. It had a flashing red light at each point, and they flashed at the same time. Slowly, the craft started turning until it was pointing right in our direction. We all squealed with nervousness. We all convinced ourselves and each other that it was much too far away and that there was no way it could see us. Jason got up and turned the outside lights off. Then, the object turned off its lights. When Jason turned them back on, it did as well. They did this a few more times, with the craft always copying their actions. Then, with no warning, it just shot forward and then came to a dead stop over top of us, and when it stopped that quickly, it seemed that the momentum made the front end point downwards right at us. The group ran inside and hid, with one of them eventually working up the courage to look out the window, only to see yet another rare sight. Bigfoot. The witness kept quiet about this because, you know, one thing at a time, but that night heard bipedal footsteps on the roof of the cabin. The next morning, two of the friends went to the river to fish, and the others had coffee on the porch, but looked to the tree line and saw the drivers of the alien craft. I saw as clear as day what is commonly called a gray alien. Its big bulbous head was peeking out from behind a tree, and I saw its dark almond-shaped eyes and the tiny nose with two very small holes. I'm not sure if it felt me looking at it, but it slowly moved back behind the tree. At that point, the fishermen came running back, saying that they had crossed paths with Bigfoot again. 40 feet into the woods of mainly ponderosa pine, they saw the Bigfoot. It walked step by step with them, and then it looked over at them and realized they were watching it. That's when it started walking towards them. They started running, and they saw that it was walking as quickly as they ran. When they made it through the woods, they got to a clearing. They ran with everything they had. They said it was dark brown in color and maybe 7 feet tall. Its hair was bushy in spots. Most people go their entire lives without seeing aliens, Bigfoot, or UFOs, so the fact that this trip to the cabin resulted in a hat trick is pretty impressive. If this is true, why was Bigfoot so close to an alien craft? Is he perhaps an alien as well? Is he a Wookiee?
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have Project Grudge Report 13. Okay, so I've read quite a few different UFO sighting stories and stories of alleged alien abductions, and this is fully one of the most terrifying that I have ever heard of. So basically, the story starts off in March of 1956 when Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett was assisting Major William Cunningham in the White Sands Missile testing grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pair were out searching for debris from a recent rocket test when Major Cunningham heard a loud scream. His first thought was that Sergeant Lovett had been bitten by a snake, so he went around to help aid his partner when he allegedly saw something he never expected. He recounted seeing the sergeant being dragged away by some sort of long serpentine arm that had wrapped around his legs. Whatever this creature was, it was connected to a hovering silver disc that was in the air about 15 feet away. The major stood there in horror as he watched this creature and the sergeant retreat into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky. Of course, he radioed for help, and while he was taken to the hospital for observation, search teams were sent out immediately. It wouldn't happen until 3 days later that they would find the body of Sergeant Lovett, only 10 miles from the site where he was said to have disappeared from. The autopsy performed on him later also only raised more questions than answers, as his body was severely harmed. So of course there was an investigation that happened, and many people claim this investigation was detailed in a 600-page document labeled Project Grudge Report 13. But the problem with this is that no official information on Report 13 exists, and the US government denies its very existence. Though Grudge Reports 1 through 12 have been declassified along with Report 14, no official mention or accounting of Report 13 exists, and the story solely relies on secondhand accounts of the horrible incident. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Cigar Shaped UFO. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet, being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and a lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished." The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen and he said that he didn't know." Well, this is obviously all very strange and peculiar. What has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and the passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spy craft, while others believe it was definitely something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lubbock incident. On August 25th, 1951 in Lubbock, Texas, a group of scientists from the Texas Technical College were all hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson. They were all just chilling, enjoying each other's company until around 9:20 p.m. when they saw something very strange. It was a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish-green lights passing overhead. They were completely confused over what it could be, but figured that the lights would likely reappear, which they did. About an hour later, the lights reappeared, and at this point, all these scientists knew that they had witnessed something exceptionally interesting, but what was it? The scientists weren't the only ones to witness the lights either. About 350 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret Sandia Corporation, who had a high-level Q security clearance, had been sitting outside with his wife, quote, gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was, when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights. There were more sightings as well, all reporting a similar thing. The group of scientists began investigating, tracking the lights, which they witnessed 12 more times. They measured the angle of the lights, they tracked the speed, and they attempted, unsuccessfully, to try and measure the UFO's altitude. Here's the deal with this though. The government did end up investigating, but the official explanation for these lights is the most cryptic message I've ever seen. It read, quote, "I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of birds reflecting the light from mercury vapor streetlights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light, but they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professor saw have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomenon. I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it is an interesting story of how a scientist set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights. Telling the story would lead to his identity, and in exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity." Despite people claiming that the mystery has been solved, by this explanation, people are left with a lot more questions than answers. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange at the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing the object. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on his Decca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and that is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some of his friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet off of the shore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for. So what could have all these witnesses seen? Since they have never officially identified what it was in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Westall incident. Taking it back to 1966, we have the largest mass UFO sighting in Australia that at the time was largely ignored. This incident took place when over 300 students and staff members of a school in Melbourne all witnessed multiple UFOs silently flying through the air before they landed in a nearby field. Well, there's been a ton of speculation about this incident in the many years, and one witness account stands out among the rest, and that is the account made by the science teacher from the school, Andrew Greenwood. He was alerted to the UFO event by a hysterical student, and when he went outside to see for himself, everything changed. Previously a skeptic of UFO stories, Andrew's mind was abruptly changed when he saw, as he described it, a round silver object about the size of a car with a metal rod sticking up in the air. He went on to explain that suddenly 5 planes came and surrounded the object, all while more people were gathering to watch. He called what happened next the most amazing flying he has ever seen, explaining that, quote, every time they got too close to the object it would slowly accelerate, then rapidly accelerate, and then move away from them and stop. Then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen. This went on for about 20 minutes before the mysterious object just vanished. As weird as this all was, what was almost weirder was what happened next. Firstly, the headmaster of the school is said to have tried to put a stop to anyone talking about the incident at all, threatening severe punishment to any student or staff who was caught speaking about it, and when the Royal Australian Air Force contacted him, he refused to talk to them at all about it. There have also been stories of witnesses getting visits from people warning them not to speak of the incident. Andrew explained, quote, when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself so that he could compare it with his own observation, she just wouldn't say anything. Another witness who did talk to Andrew and described what she had seen in great detail, just 30 minutes later refused to speak to him and wouldn't say a word. Was this because of the threats from the headmaster, or was something else going on here? This is definitely one strange UFO story that leaves behind a lot of questions.
Starting off, we have the original Roswell sighting. One simply cannot discuss aliens, UFOs, or anything supernatural without mentioning that fateful summer of 1947. Rancher W.W. Mack Brazel had found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, roughly 120 kilometers north of Roswell, sometime between mid-June and early July, describing it as rubber strips, tinfoil, and thick paper. The ranch had no phone and no radio, leaving Matt completely unaware of the ongoing flying saucer craze, so he gathered the debris and just pushed it under some brush to dispose of it. This was not the first instance of a flying disc spotting in the region, with several stories already being reported to the press that year. On July 5th, Mack drove into Corona, where he heard stories of silvery flying discs, and 2 days later, on July 7th, made the decision to bring the wreckage into the sheriff's office in Roswell. The sheriff called in the Roswell Army Airfield, which assigned the matter to Major Jesse Marcel. Mack brought Major Marcel back to the debris site, and the two gathered up more pieces of rubber and tinfoil, with the Major taking the materials home. On July 8th, Public Information Officer for the Roswell Army, Walter Hott, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. On that same day, Major Marcel took the material to his base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who reported the findings to General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield. FWAF for short. General Ramey ordered that the material be flown to Fort Worth immediately, leaving Marcel to board a B-29 Superfortress to make the flight. As soon as Marcel brought the material to General Ramey's office, both Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon kite. The weather officer on duty explained to reporters that ray wind devices were used at around 80 weather stations across the country. The balloons were attached to a 6-pointed reflective device that looked like a silver star. After launch, the balloon would expand with increasing altitude before bursting at around 60,000 feet, with pieces dispersing in their fall to the ground. Now, after the initial newspaper reports of 1947, the Roswell incident faded from public attention for more than 30 years, until the late 1970s, which brings us to February of 1978, when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel, whose statements contradicted those he made to the press in 1947, saying they wanted some comments from him, but he wasn't at liberty to do that. All he could do was keep his mouth shut. And General Ramey is the one who told the newspapers, the newsman, what it was and to forget about it. It's nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, they both knew differently. Now, while he didn't elaborate on that statement, and I wish he did deny the popular theories at the time of any bodies being found near the debris. After the United States congressional inquiries, the General Accounting Office launched an inquiry and directed the Office of United States Secretary of the Air Force to conduct an internal investigation. A report released in 1994 concluded that the material recovered in 1947 was likely, keyword here, debris from Project Mogul, a military surveillance program employing high-altitude balloons in classified portions of an unclassified New York University project by atmospheric researchers. A scholarly consensus emerged concluding that the military had decided to conceal the true purpose of the crash device, allegedly nuclear test monitoring, and instead inform the public that the crash was of a weather balloon. The balloon had allegedly been launched from Alamogordo, Army Airfield a month earlier, carrying a radar reflector and classified Project Mogul sensors for experimental monitoring of Soviet nuclear testing. The Air Force reports were dismissed by UFO experts as being either disinformation or simply implausible. Yeah. Now, the scary part about all of this for me is counting how many times the government has changed its tale, expecting the general public to believe them each time. Which story do you believe? In fourth place, we have an anonymous report from 2013 from Athens, Texas. A retired military firefighter and commercial pilot, who was also a former astronaut, submitted his account of what happened around 10:15 p.m. on the evening of July 5, 2013, to the National UFO Reporting Center, also known as NUFORC. He reported that he and his family were sitting outside, and when he looked up into the sky, he observed a fairly large orange glowing orb moving rapidly overhead at around 90 degrees of elevation. A minute or two later, his whole family spotted a group of 3 similar objects along the same flight path as the first one. The objects allegedly gave off no sound and seemed to glow from atmospheric heating. He and his family attempted to record the objects using their iPhones, although the grainy dark video was of no evidential use. A direct quote from him reads, "They moved much faster than orbital satellites, like the International Space Station, or airplanes, but much slower than meteors, and did not change brightness as a meteor would upon entering the atmosphere." So, if a former astronaut and pilot has no explanation for what he witnessed, what the heck was it? In the middle of our list today, we're discussing a San Antonio spotting of 7 donuts in the sky. On May 19th of 1952, an air crew flying an RB-36 reconnaissance aircraft reported spotting a series of, you guessed it, several donut shapes appearing in the sky, and were able to take photographs to accompany their incident report, which can be found in National Archives. The crew of 22 reported flying just north of Sonora when they originally spotted the phenomenon, stating that the plane was headed on a 301-degree heading at 18,000 feet, with relatively calm winds for that altitude. At 8:05 p.m., the objects appeared just to the left of the bomber's nose, at a range estimated by the crew to be around 80 to 120 kilometers ahead. The objects were stacked vertically from approximately 25,000 feet to 60,000 feet. And even with all the photographs and drawings, there is still no definite answer as to what was spotted. In second place, we have the Washington Flap. At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th of 1952, Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, try saying that 5 times fast, spotted 7 objects on his radar. The objects were around 24 kilometers south-southwest of the city, not following any established flight paths, and no known aircrafts were in that area. Edward's superior, Harry Barnes, a senior air traffic controller at that airport, watched the objects on the radarscope, later writing that they knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of any ordinary aircraft they knew of. Harry had 2 controllers check Edward's radar, and they found it was working pretty normally. He then called the National Airport's radar-equipped control tower, and the controllers there said that they had unidentified blips on their radar screen, and that a hovering bright light in the sky was moving at speeds they couldn't understand. Now at this point, other objects appeared in all sectors of the radar scope, and when they moved over the White House and the United States Capitol, Harry then called the Andrews Air Force Base, which was located around 10 miles away. Although they reported that they had no unusual objects on their radar, an airman soon called the base's control tower to report the sighting of a strange object. Airman William Brady, who was in the tower, saw an object that appeared to be an orange ball of fire, trailing a tail, saying it was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Now, where have I said that? Oh yeah. As William tried to alert the other personnel in the tower, the strange object took off at an unbelievable speed. On one of National Airport's runways, pilot S.C. Pierman was waiting in the cockpit of his plane for permission to take off. After spotting what he believed to be a meteor, he was told that the control tower's radar had detected unknown objects closing in on his position. Pierman observed 6 objects that he described as white, tailless, fast-moving lights over a 14-minute period. He was in radio contact with Harry during his sighting, and Harry later reported that each sighting coincided with a pip that could be seen near his plane. When he reported that the light streaked off at a high speed, it disappeared on their scope. Now meanwhile, back at the Andrews Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Charles Davenport observed an orange-red light to the south, where the light would appear to stand still, then make an abrupt change in direction and altitude, with the phenomena happening over several times. At one point, both radar centers at National Airport and the radar at Andrews Air Force Base were tracking an object hovering over a radio beacon. The object vanished in all 3 radar centers at the same time. At 3 a.m., shortly before 2 United States Air Force F-94 Starfire jet fighters, I'm really ancient on my airplanes today, from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware arrived over Washington. All of the objects vanished from the radar at National Airport. However, when the jets ran low on fuel and left, the objects returned, which convinced Harry that the UFOs were monitoring radio traffic and behaving accordingly. Now, the objects were last detected by radar at 5:30 a.m. The government later tried dismissing the events of that day on a temperature blip, but those who were present have been adamant otherwise. In first place, we have the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Yeah, I know I said I'd be talking about UFO sightings today, but this event is a combination sighting and abduction that I couldn't leave off the list. The Hills were a married couple that lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Barney was employed by the United States Postal Service, while Betty was a social worker. They were active in the local Unitarian congregation, members of the NAACP, and Barney sat on a local board of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. Overall, they seem like pretty normal folks, right? The UFO sighting happened at around 10:30 p.m. on September 19th of 1961. The Hills were driving back to their home in Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls in Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty noticed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the moon in the planet Jupiter upwards to the west of the moon. While Barney was driving, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star. Only, it was moving upwards. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty convinced Barney to stop their car for a closer look, as well as to walk their dog, Dulcie. Barney obliged and stopped at a picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Now by this point, Betty had dug out her binoculars for a closer look and described seeing an odd-shaped aircraft flashing multicolored lights travel across the face of the moon, believing it to be a flying saucer based off of stories she had heard from her sister. Now taking his turn with the binoculars, Barney thought it was just a commercial plane at first, but soon changed his mind because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction, causing him to realize something was wrong. The Hills said they continued driving on the isolated road, moving very slowly towards Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came even closer. At one point, the object passed above a restaurant and signal tower on top of Cannon Mountain and came out near the Old Man of the Mountain. Betty testified that it was at least 1.5 times the length of the granite cliff profile, which was 40 feet long and it seemed to be rotating. At one point, the object descended rapidly towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered at around 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. Barry stepped away from the vehicle and moved closer to the object, which he later said was roughly the size of a huge pancake. And that statement right there just made me hungry. Still using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look right at him. In his report to investigator Walter Webb of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, Barney described specifically that the beings were somehow not human, but humanoid. In unison, all but one figure moved to what appeared to be a panel on the rear wall of the hallway that encircled the front portion of the craft. The one remaining figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message to him, saying, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Barney had a recollection of observing the humanoid forms wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. Red lights on what appeared to be bat wing fins began to telescope out of the sides of the craft, and a long structure descended from the bottom of the aircraft. Now, the silent aircraft approached what Barney estimated was within 50 to 80 feet overhead and 300 feet away from him. Not arriving home until dawn, the Hills stated that they had some odd sensations and impulses they couldn't explain. Now, extremely confused, the Hills said they tried to reconstruct what had exactly happened the night before, but their memories were incomplete and fragmented. Notice I did a little bit of a jump there. That's because we don't know what happened. After sleeping for a few hours, Betty awoke and placed the shoes and clothing she had worn during the drive into her closet, observing that the dress was torn at the hem, zipper, lining, and later noted a pinkish powder on her dress. Now, over the years, 5 different laboratories have conducted chemical and forensic analyses on the dress. This wasn't the only damaged items in their possession. Barney said that the leather strap for the binoculars was torn, but didn't remember how. The toes of his best dress shoes were scraped, and their watches were broken, and no matter what, never worked again. There were shiny concentric circles, so similar to the rings that you would find on a tree trunk on their car's trunk, that had not been there the previous day. Betty and Barney experimented with a compass, noting that when they moved it close to the spots, the needle would whirl rapidly. But when they moved it a few inches away from the shiny spots, it would drop down. 10 days after the UFO encounter, Betty began having a series of vivid dreams, which continued for 5 successive nights. She stated that she experienced them with a degree of detail and intensity that she never had before. And after the 5th night, they stopped and never recurred, although they occupied her thoughts during the day. Determined to recover their lost memories, the Hills opted to partake in hypnosis sessions. Barney recalled driving the car away from the UFO, but afterwards he felt compelled to pull off the road and drive into the woods, eventually spotting 6 men standing on the dirt road. The car stalled, and 3 of the men approached the car, telling Barney not to fear them. He was still anxious, however, and he reported that their leader told him to close his eyes. While hypnotized, Barney said, "I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes," a statement he would repeat each session. The best anyone has been able to rebut what happened was claiming stress and sleep deprivation as the cause of what they saw and experienced. I'll admit, I'm usually much more of a skeptic, but this seems pretty dang real to me.